Michael, you're a mathematician by training, but you also do many other things. You extensively studied AI and machine learning tools. What excites you most about the potential benefits of applying the technology into smart cities, but also what worries you? So if you could address the double edge sort of AI.
I think first need to differentiate between different sorts of AI, and I think there's a lot of risk and danger in things like generative AI being applied as an oracle of truth. But I think a lot of the stuff that's going on or likely to go on in smart cities is more traditional machine learning style AI, which is optimization of something. And here I think a lot of the problems and challenges are not really new problems and challenges, they're problems and challenges that we have with any other technology. So the fact that your Volvo doesn't recognize a kangaroo because it's been trained on elk or something is not a problem of AI per se, it's a problem of engineering. And so there's, like any new technology, there will be teething issues. And so I'm understating it, of course, but a lot of those problems are not new challenges specific to AI. But in something like a smart city where you are now talking about distributive control and a complex system, there are emergent challenges there which are kind of worrisome. If you've got individual parts of the city being optimized to do different things, it's not clear that the global system is going to behave as you want it to, right? Take our smart freeways that we're designing, right? It's designed so that your travel time is reduced, but that's different from optimizing to reduce the amount of travel that you do. Right? So there might be a better global way of solving that problem. So I think there's huge opportunities in terms of optimizing stuff, and as we are getting denser in our cities, there's a huge need to do that. There's a lot of traditional risks, and there's risks from the emerging systems that we need to worry about. I think the other thing, sorry to take so long about this, but the other thing to worry about is that with any new technology, people get left behind. With a smart city, that may be people that are less technological savvy, but it's also people that are in different cities or in the country or don't have access to the same technology, the same facility. UAE was mentioned earlier, and Dubai and Abu Dhabi in particular. 2 weeks ago I was in Al Ain, which is another city in the UAE, quite different from, it's where the university is, but it's quite different from Dubai and Abu Dhabi in terms of technology and all of the things that you talked about. So I think there's a need to look at making sure that the whole society comes along for the ride when you start having smart cities.
I'm just kind of curious, what have you learned in their approach to solving those problems? Because they seem to be very kind of upfront, and they have obviously a lot of resources. Bahrain is building the whole new smart city on blockchain. What are the impressions? What have you learned?
I think examples like Singapore and Hong Kong may be as important or even more important. UAE obviously has a lot of money to start with, and in the words of a current or future US president, if you start with a small loan of $1 million, it's easy to make money, right?
It's a good starting point, right? It's a first world problem, not everybody's problem. But Michael, I would like to come back to the point you mentioned that there's a big complexity of those smart cities, a complexity, diversity of sensors and data coming in, and that's your strong area. So I'm just would like to ask you a little bit more what can we learn from your discipline? As the smart cities generate a vast amount of complex data, how can principles of complex adaptive systems be applied to develop more flexible and responsive AI systems for urban environments?
So let me give you one specific concrete example. We have a project which we've just finished with the WA Police Department, looking at how to route police cars in response to a major incident. And the objective is a combination of getting to the incident quickly, but also collecting information as you approach the incident. So if there's something's happened at a speedway in the northern suburbs somewhere, if you send all your police cars down the same freeway to reach that same destination, you're not collecting much information. You want to send them in different routes so they collect information about who's leaving the scene of the incident, for example. And in this case, by building a distributive system where each of the individual police cars acts as an independent agent in an efficient way, we can achieve that optimum in terms of information. And yet the police cars are not doing anything more complicated. They follow a modified routing algorithm, but one which is decentralized. So it's a combination of that. What I'm trying to get to is it's a combination of that very local rule. It's on the smartphone of the officer in the police car, telling him where to go, which roads, or her to go, which roads to take. But it's designed in such a way that these things collectively have a strong emergent property. And so it's understanding that transition.
So I hear that you're supportive of decentralized systems, distributed systems, rather than leaving the city to some sort of central.
Well, I think from an engineering
Governance.
perspective, you kind of need both. Obviously, Web3 decentralization is a big part of that. But at the same time, it's also a cornerstone of complex systems. So that, I mean, my interest comes from the particular academic hammer that I'm using to hit nails on the head with is distributed systems.
Mm-hmm. And I also note something, because you often talk about the human aspects and ethics. How can mathematics help us to make those smart cities more ethical and fair?
So it's a panel discussion, right? And I was given the questions beforehand. This is the one that I ignored because it's too hard. It's a tough question. It's a very important question. But honestly, you need to be able to define what you mean to be fair, what you mean to be ethical. Mathematics is a fairly concrete discipline. We work with things that we can quantify. Fairness is very hard to quantify. Having said that, I think we can talk about equitable access to things, equitable access to resources, ensuring that there's sufficient resources distributed for everyone to have access to them. But that is only the first step. Just because you can say everyone is 10 minutes from public transport or whatever your metric is, doesn't necessarily make it fair. It's a starting point. Yeah. But we need to be more, I strongly believe we need to be more inclusive in how we talk about fairness. Yes. Yeah. And part of it is talking to the people of concern. So yes. In bringing the communities along for the ride, bring the lower socioeconomic communities that are, by definition in most cities, further from the centre of the city, looking at even an Indigenous perspective on access to these particular things. How do different groups of people feel about it? What is important to them? Because the other danger is, if you ask me as a mathematician to define fairness, I'm going to define it in terms of my narrow view of what I mean by fairness. That might not be what other people feel is important.
Yeah, it's a very nice, great answer. Great answer, because there's probably no one way of answering this question. That's why we have a very diverse panel. And that's why I'm also very happy to have maybe JP now adding some different perspectives so that you look at the space of smart cities from a more holistic point of view, from a regenerative ecological point of view. Could you tell us a little bit more about those different perspectives and views that you're bringing into looking into smart city, into its fairness and how it applies technology?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to appreciate you madly for the sessions we've had, because listening to the first two speakers, half of what I was going to say I don't have to say. Thank goodness. So yeah, and there have been tremendous, everyone who's participating here today, thank you, really, for being here, pushing the envelope, and being here at the moment that I feel is truly pivotal for us as a species. This is, like, we are in such an important moment. And why I feel that way, and mine is also only one perspective, right? And I really appreciate the diversity here, because this is the template for how we address what's going to happen. If we can't hear each other, if we can't receive each other, if we can't listen, we're not going to be able to reweave the social fabric that has been progressively unraveling over the last pretty much since World War II. So we are in the moment where we can reclaim that and reclaim a world where we can get along. I'm with Kaya that you can't depend on tech, can't offload that to a blockchain. That blockchain cannot solve the trust problem. It can help us do things like proof of human. Great, you know, that kind of thing is wonderful. But we are at just such a huge moment of question. Can we, in fact, come together now to make these choices collectively? And that is, you know, do we have the mechanisms to do that? DAOs are offering at least an invitation that way. There are some people in this room who don't believe they're working very well yet. But they do provide some promise. So really, what I want to say about the moment is to invite us to rekindle the capacity to agree to disagree and yet still move forward together. That's how I would answer this query.
Thank you. I move to maybe to the next one. Do you see any potential challenges, a conflict between the technological advancements and where we are as humans? Do you think we're going too fast?
Oh, well, yeah, that's hilarious. We constantly come up with tools, and all our tools are extensions of our human capacities, right? From, you know, early metal banging tools to blockchains, AI, and the Internet of Things. So we're always running after the effects. So really, if I want to say anything about this, we talk all the time in AI about alignment. It's like, how do we make sure that the tools don't run away and do something terrible? Well, how about the alignment among us? Really, it's the intentions that humans have for the tools that are the most important. We tend to forget that when we consider the power that the tools will give us. And so being Web 0, I'm actually pre-Web 0, and it's so fun to hear people talk about things as if they are brand new. I went to the Agents Conference in 1997, right? First, so bunch of this is not new, and these conversations have happened before, but what is happening now finally is that the capacity of the technology is catching up to our imagination for it. And so that, again, is why this is such an important moment. There's a strong parallel for me between this moment and where we were in the mid to late 90s. Because the unifying, converging tech then was just simple digitization, right? Of all of these, what we now call assets, into the digital space. We have the same kind of convergence happening now, only a very different circumstance in the world. First of all, people are technologically literate, which they weren't then. And second of all, these are not just assets or tools. These are power tools. You know, all of what we're talking about here. And so from the city perspective, because I do want to get to that piece, there is a question about, humans just continuously create cities. We do that. And we're not, the motivation for cities has largely been through the industrial revolutions that we've had, the agricultural and then the industrial in particular. And the tendency has been to, the more concentrated humans get in a city, the more the surrounding planet gets destroyed. And so everywhere in the world we see, you know, especially in places like Dubai, we see just the devastation of the surrounding area. And then, you know, more people come into the city because the land is less and less arable, and we are less and less connected with the planet to which we belong. So, and planting a bunch of trees is not the answer, right? You cannot recreate an ancient forest. So we really are at this decision. Do we want smart cities, or do we want a way of living where we feel secure, where we feel free, and where we feel connected as part of something larger than our little selves?
That's a great question. Would you have an answer to that?
Would I? Well, I can only give you my answer.
Please
and
share.
I would hope that everyone considers this and has their answer. What is the world we choose to live in? That's.
I'm not sure we have much choice, but enough.
Well, see, okay, so this a really good point.
Question of
Andrzej.
choice.
It is, and it's also a question of, do you believe the narrative that you don't have the power to make that choice?
Can I
Yeah,
Do you
please.
believe that that's mutually exclusive?
What?
Smart city and living in a community in that on the earth. Do you think we can merge the two and make it something amazing?
Can
Well,
we have both?
I think human beings will do what they do, right? So some will, just like some people prefer to live in a city and some people prefer to live more rurally. That's fine. And actually, we're seeing so much more of this now in the world because we have connectivity of communications, right? We've got an eco-village down south, and part of their big proposition is you can work from home and still live in an eco-village, in a community, growing your own food, being largely energy self-sufficient. All of these things are now possible and more possible than they've ever been. But within the city, and this is where it gets, you know, we have a slippery slope. As was brought up earlier this morning, it's a corporate, the regulations are coming from the companies themselves. We're entering a technocracy, and these companies are not answerable to anybody but shareholders. We have no voice in any of this, and the walled gardens that currently exist are playing a finite game, which is who's going to win, who's going to dominate the market, right? We have no say in this, and we are the product, as was pointed out. So the only way that can shift is if we actually stand up and choose the world we wish. I'm super grateful that we have things like Git, and that the original internet protocols were gifted to the world, and that the original, not the original blockchain, but really the Bitcoin blockchain was gifted to the world, right? It's an old tech also, it's from the 70s. But yeah, we just are at this moment, and the question is, what do we choose? Do we carry on in the capacity we've been in, and sleepwalk off a cliff? We could sleepwalk right into very strong dystopia, and lots of narratives are point us in that direction. I'm not going to advocate for utopia, but I will advocate for protopia, and that means us stepping up and supporting those initiatives that we see empower human beings to live into the potential that we truly have. We are at that moment. It's not off in the future anymore. It's now. That's why I'm a recovering futurist. I'm a present momentist now. End of sermon.
The future is here. Yes, Michael.
I think very well said. But I think on the point that you're making, it's important to note that smart cities don't have to be mega cities, right? So all of the point about connectedness is an opportunity to be less physically centralized. if we provide the resources so we don't have to be all driving into the centre of Perth every day.
That's a very good point. It doesn't have to be vision like from Hollywood movies that it's going to be a glass big city with flying drones. It could be a network of small interconnected communities.
Yes.
And it could be a smart city too.
Exactly. So, and that's why, we can look to places like Dubai and Singapore and Hong Kong, and that's one model. But,
yes.
And the world's going to have places like that.
Yeah.
But we don't have to just be mega cities.
That's true, and we have the choice. Maybe Singapore doesn't have the choice because of the space, but we're very privileged here. And I would also like to touch, because those technologies will have huge impact on the environment. AI burns a lot of energy. And I probably would like to move now to Vidy, who potentially can solve some of these problems with his new project. About your great project, and tell us what it is. It could solve some of the problems we just touched on.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. For those who don't know me, I'll give a little bit brief about what I do. So I started the blockchain research and development lab in 2019, and over the last maybe from 2021, we could say, we actually got running, although we launched in 2019. And the objective of the lab was to work closely with companies or startups in WA where blockchain as a technology was needed, and we could provide the technical help. And in that last 3 or 4 years, we have completed around 12 different projects, or worked with 12 different companies and helped them with their proof of concepts and developing their minimum viable products. And the result of all that work is what I can see this year happening. This has been a very, I should say, a phenomenal year for us. We have won a very large research grant from Australian Research Council to set up an industrial transformation training center. And that center is primarily on building and construction industry. And the objective there is to see the energy that goes into the building sector and how to track that complete energy from the start of the project all the way till its execution. So for any building that is built, there is a planning phase, right? The initial phase when you plan the whole, maybe the mega cities that you're talking about, maybe small smart cities. Planning goes in. So there is a lot of energy that goes into that planning phase. Next is actual construction or the building of the building or the construction of the building. And then is the operation or the execution, commissioning of the building when the building is used. So all these 3 phases generate a lot of emissions, consume a lot of energy, and which in turn translates into emissions. So we are building this through this center. We will be building a platform that can be used by building companies across Australia, and this platform will be a traceability or a monitoring platform where information at all these 3 different stages during the building phase will be collected and stored. Yeah, so my team will be responsible for building the blockchain infrastructure to so that at various stages during this building process, energy could be captured, monitored, and recorded on the blockchain. And this is important because of the need for companies to report on their emissions. So if you look into ESG, one of the foundation requirement is that you need to be able to prove how much energy is your business consuming for operations, right? And how can you truthfully prove that this is exactly what we have used. And this is where a very, very strong use case for blockchain from a traceability of information point of view. And like in the earlier discussion, I think, was it Andy? Oh, yeah. Andy mentioned that the use cases of blockchain doesn't have to be everywhere. You know, you don't have to do blockchain for everything, but you have to find out the uses where the blockchain can be applied. And so this is one very strong use case of blockchain in traceability. So this is the $5 million grant that we have got from industry and from the federal government, and $2.5 million from the industry. So it's a substantial funding that we have received to work on this over the next 4 years.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Are you hiring?
Thanks. Yeah, of course. We will talk offline.
That's a big achievement. So it's a great that we have that big grant here in Western Australia. Well done.
Yeah, and somehow or the other, the few other projects that we were working on had an angle of green technology, and they also have been successful. So this we're in November. So in the first week of November, the Australian Research Council also announced the linkage grants, and we were successful in getting another linkage grant, which is on cyber situational awareness. I think somebody asked a question about cyber security earlier on, and one of the things that happens when you are building a cyber solution is again energy intensive. So this project was looking at, it will be looking at low energy algorithms to build cyber solutions. So that is the second work that we have been doing. So again, in the green tech space. And the third one, which we probably will know early in the next year, is another linkage grant, which is on green transportation. So how we can connect, especially for Australia, which is so spread out. One is say, Sydney to Perth. If you imagine, the lot of transportation innovation can happen. So that is another project that we have submitted for funding, and we have got very strong positive feedback. So I'm hoping that it will be successful as well. So yeah, so this has been somehow from the shift from blockchain to green technology, but underlying being blockchain is what we have been working on in this over the last few years.
It's phenomenal, and that also relates to what I think Ben mentioned, that we have that great talent here, Michael, Vidy, incredible potential to give even more to the world and solve the problems. And I'm very glad that you're both working on those AI and blockchain technologies that are the key technologies for smart cities. And I think, as JP mentioned, yes, this will not replace trust between humans, but it can help us to verify some of the kind of, or maybe bring more transparency to greenwashing by big corporations, which they used to do, and now we can verify that. I think we had a question from Julia I would like to ask.
Yes, I wanted to ask, why are you building, what's the reason why you would build a new blockchain for it? You build a layer 1 blockchain for it?
No, we are not building a layer. We are not building a blockchain.
Just
we are using a blockchain.
On the blockchain.
Yeah, an application for this use case.
Okay, that's what blockchain do you use?
We have not yet finalized. So through the process, we will find out which will be the most apt blockchain for the given solution.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, because these days you hear a lot of, we just build the new layer 1 and we bring out something for the real estate industry, and especially something important like what you're building there, where you want to be able to access that data in 30 years, potentially, and then that blockchain might not exist anymore because it was just, made it maybe 2 years in development, and then doesn't find adoption. Yeah. So that's a big problem we see in real estate. That's why I was just trying to understand, are you building the blockchain, or are you using something that's already out there with potentially still being there in 30 years? And just what's that level? But yeah, that makes sense.
It's an application, but a good segue, because you are next in the in the questions. And I understand that Vidy's we're working on applications using the blockchain as the kind of basic trust layer for transparency. But it's probably very relevant, since you mentioned the process of building buildings, to what Julia is doing, tokenizing those buildings. And that is, again, something we're making a little circle here, making sure that we have now this technology that can make owning a building or a property for many young people more accessible. And I got this for the last few years, asking my students, what is it next? You're graduating, do you have a job? No, it's probably IGA for the next couple of years for many. Can you afford a house or a building? No, that's the answer. It's a very simple answer. So tokenization potentially could solve some of those problems, and I believe Julia can tell us a bit more about your project.
Yes, sure. Well, I think a good example is when we arrived this morning here and we had to find parking, and we paid for the parking. And I came with Brandon from Orange Brick Road, and he doesn't like government too much, and he goes like, "This is government university. This parking should be this should be all private here. That should be all privately owned." And I said to him, "Well, imagine this could be all owned by the students, or by the visitors, or everyone who is coming here, and they actually would all receive a return from the people who are paying for the parking fees, because they have the opportunity to just invest a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000 into these car parks here. And now we are all receiving every month, every quarter, every year, returns from all the people who are paying for the parking fees, instead of just going to the government." And he goes like, "That's actually a really nice case. Yeah, I actually like that." And he never understands really what I'm doing. And this he got, because it actually opens up that we all can have ownership, even in public places, where we never have the opportunity to buy in, or, public parks, all of these public places we could own together by just basically open up these markets for everyone. Yeah. And this is what we do with tokenization of real estate. So it can be applied for commercial buildings, it can be applied for public buildings, and also if we're looking into where the trend is going with social housing and affordable housing and everything. From my conversations, I was told in this space, social housing projects are built on government lease, 99-year lease, for example. So if we can tokenize that long-term leases as well, where we then can secure the economic rights of these kind of properties, that makes sense. So the trend is going that we don't even own titles anymore in the future. The trend is going that the government is potentially going to own more and more land, and we're leasing of the government, and then we're building on the government. So it's all the rights we have on titles, the titles are giving us is being distributed into new rights, and this is where the blockchain can come in.
So the government still owns the property, but it distributes through blockchain the ownership or of the economic rights from that.
Exactly.
More equitably to the community.
Exactly.
And that's much more affordable. Yeah, I cannot buy a $2 million house, but maybe with $2,000 I can somehow participate in that economy.
That's correct.
So why we're not doing it yet?
Well, we're working on it.
Okay. It sounds like tokenization. It sounds like as we probably know, we're going definitely. Many governments talk openly about tokenization. We're getting clear regulations in that space, but somehow we're not there yet. Is that a technological issue or a regulatory issue, you think?
It's a regulatory issue. Let's say like that. If you come up with a new innovation, then you need first movers who are doing it. And only if then thousands and thousands of people are coming in and doing it, only then at some stage the regulator is opening their eyes and say, we maybe have to create frameworks and regulations about that. Nobody back in the day was looking into Bitcoin. Nobody was looking into all these projects that are starting to run on the different blockchains. We are only now, after all these years, getting to the point where they actually seriously start taking this really serious, want to start regulating the space. The same we have in every industry we're trying to innovate. So we have the same in real estate. And a couple of years ago I had a meeting, and that was already, I think, when was it, 2020, something like that, or 21. I had a meeting with Land Services, which is part of Landgate, and I showed them what we were doing with real estate tokenization And so the way how we at Blocksquare transfer the ownership in real estate, or the model we recommend for it, is basically the transfer of economic rights instead of trying to transfer titles and the old models, because that's very, very expensive and is very limited of what we can do, because this space is so heavily regulated in the old. So we can, to combine the old with blockchain technology is a problem, because we cannot create the new one. We can only digitize. And this is stopping us in real estate tokenization for over 10 years. There has been many, many trials, many who try to solve the problems in real estate and for the closed market and to open it up. But if you try to digitize the old way, you can never achieve new things. And that's what we were doing with Blocksquare since 2017. We try to find new way and new infrastructure to transfer real estate, legally binding, but less regulated in a way so we can actually open up the market for everyone, and we can make real estate tradable, and you can go shopping real estate like you can shop your clothes in the future.
Sounds cool, with a few $100s. And I understand that we need regulations to protect investors and consumers, but we don't want to have too much so that it doesn't stifle the innovation, right?
So
what's the right balance?
Yes, so but what we were trying to do is, instead of creating a framework where we were saying we need for laws to be changed, we were looking into existing laws in real estate and corporate laws and all of that, which are existing in all or most countries in the world. And in all these countries in the world where these laws exist, like the law of, like corporate law, of the corporate resolution laws, this is where we can basically tokenize.
And I've heard that you have a much greater success within the European Union because the regulations are much clearer there, and you're advancing much faster. Is that correct?
I mean, the regulations are only now being formed. Like we have with MICA, we are very clearly now what we can do from 2025 on. It's you know, not so grey anymore, and we know exactly where we're standing in Europe. Europe for Blocksquare was the best, or it's always like the pilot market for us, on the first mover market, because our headquarter is based in Slovenia. That's where everything started. We did our first pilots there and so on. So it's our strongest market, just because we know it very well, and we built from scratch around that market. And then this year came MICA, and we got the confirmations in MICA, and so we're and it's very, very clear for asset tokenization as well. And I think it's a great market for Australia as well to look into how is this going to be regulated over there, because it is already so clear. And what is in Europe as well as the laws around real estate are very protective. So it's very clear. A notarization has a very strong and automated process then as well. So what we managed to do last year is we did the first real estate transaction that we also notarized on the blockchain, notarized on the land registry. So we have created the first on and off chain connection between a tokenized, fractionalized real estate asset and the land registry. So you cannot sell this property without a token buyback of the market, and this is what we need. This is what's missing in RWA. That's missing in the real world asset, a whole ecosystem that you don't know what's happening with your you know, real world, like with your car, for example. If you tokenize a car, or if at least a property you cannot move, you know, that brings you already more security. But if someone is selling it, how do I get notified as a property owner? And we were the first ones in the world who achieved that in Europe.
So you work with the institutions, blockchain plus institutions, right?
We
and
work.
The registry.
No, we didn't have to. We were looking into how's the process in the real world. Okay, a notary. This is who secures on the land registry. So we went to a Slovenian notary. We said, this is what we have. Can you notarize this property token transactions, not in euros, in the value of the property token? And they did it. And we didn't have to wait for someone from the government to approve anything because this law is existing.
Right. So you work. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You work with the current frameworks.
Exactly.
Now, how is that done, Andy, in Singapore? And you have very supportive government. You have sandboxes that allow you to experiment. Was it helpful to build your blockchain in Singapore to solve some of the problems?
Yeah. So just on that, are you talking about in particular about
in general? Yeah, in general, for your
Yeah.
blockchain that you
Yeah.
built in.
Yeah. So I think one thing in general that's helpful is that we have access to like different agencies at like who are also actively looking into developing blockchain solutions. Like for example, we are actually often being chased or approached by the banks in Singapore to so the banks often, like on a quarterly basis, they say that, oh, do you have some new use case that we could implement together? So it's actually very good. So it's like they are actually coming to us actively looking for use case. But that's it, right? At the same time, they are also looking for a real use case which they are struggling with. I think it's getting a bit better this quarter. Actually, I saw them make some announcements. So for example, in Singapore, the MAS, which is the ASIC, they are working on a project it's like a digital Sing dollars. It's like a CBDC version. So that version comes with a programmable feature where you can actually program some smart contract features to enable credit and transfer and custodian capability. So it's something that is very good. And then, but some of the hurdles we are trying to cross, right, is that when we talk to merchants or malls about using CBDC, the main question is, how does it improve their current process of using the Singapore dollars already? Because that can now yes, it can be sent electronically in a very successful way. That's it, right? Those money that can be sent electronically, they do not have a feature of being able to enable credit. So it's almost like, for example, like in Singapore, it has unfortunately happened quite frequently where gym or spa or any salons, right? You sign up for a membership, you pay for 1 year or 2 years in advance, and then 6 months or a year later it closed down and the people lose the money, and that happens because the money is actually sent to the merchant directly, and the merchant actually holds the deposit, whereby the merchant then use the money for their own operation where they're not supposed to, and they burn the money. However, if we were to use like a CBDC or to use like blockchain form of money, right, we could actually keep the money in a non-custodian way, essentially in a wallet, locked up by the smart contract, so that the merchant knows that, oh, hey, I have locked up like $2,000 or $3,000. That's worth 2 years of my membership, and then it's locked up here. You don't have to worry. I can't move the money anymore. The money is locked up for you. You can deduct the money every month, but at the same time, the consumer enjoy the safety of the non-custodian feature, where I know that because the money is not the whole sum of money is not with the merchant in the first place, so there's no chance that it's going to abuse my funds. So I think these are real use cases that blockchain can help.
That's a good point. So you're talking more about smart contracts, which technically don't require a blockchain, but if they are on blockchain, it's probably even better and more immutable, and they can bring programmability of, that's a mouthful, of money, but also other operations to make the city, well, in this sense, smart, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's maybe not wise yet, but it's definitely smarter. It functions better. It's much more efficient.
Yeah.
It solves problems of fraud,
Of fraud,
financial
yeah.
crime,
Yeah.
and brings the kind of financial health of the city, or improves it to a great extent.
Yes,
And
yes.
you're already working on that kind of project.
Yeah, so we're working on that kind of project to I think to ensure financial security and credit as well. Yeah, credit as well. So there are some industry, like there's some industry, right, that they will love to share like data. Like imagine car rental companies, they will love to share data between their own network, where they like to share the data so that they can weed out the some of the rental with bad credit history, but they wouldn't want to share their entire client base, because that would be giving out even your good clients to the other party. So so actually blockchain can solve this problem, actually, allowing them to share the credit data without exposing the entire database.
Thank you. I hear a video.
I think what Andy said, there is a similar use case that we are currently working in the building and construction industry. And that is, you see a lot of builders going bankrupt in Australia. And the reason why some of that happens is they take the money from the in advance, and then instead of paying it to the contractors who are supposed to deliver something, they invest that money in something else, trying to get better returns on that, because the work has not yet started. And by the time the work begins and the contractors are to be paid, that money may have lost, or it may have the investment may not have been very good. So I think what you just mentioned about the same use case can be applicable in the building and construction sector, where the money that is received is locked for a certain purpose only. Yeah. So that is one thing that we are working with University of Western Sydney on coming up with a solution.
So we see, obviously, blockchain smart contracts in this case can improve or eliminate some of the bad apples from the society. But if we go in this kind of, and I would like to maybe it's a provocative question, so we can improve things, we can make them better. But the case from that's, I think, a thought experiment about AI trying to optimize paper clips. So to build better paper clips, and you can improve the efficiency, make them, build them in a particular way, but also use energy much more wisely. But in the end, if you give that task to AI, it may come with a solution. Well, we probably will need to eliminate humans, because that's also a problem at some point. So how far, if we go in this process of improving efficiency, who will make the ultimate decisions about what is right and wrong? I would like to come back to the end with some kind of ethical reflections on the technology. How far is the improvement? It is perhaps human nature. You recognize in some kind of little salon merchants, in real estate, perhaps in construction, people have weakness. We're not perfect. And if we eliminate all those things, we have this perfect surveilling system, and perhaps AI used in that system to improve efficiency. Where is the space for human error and the kind of humanity that makes the life fun? Reflection for everyone.
Okay, I think I can start on this one. My opinion is that we can use AI to assist us in decision making, but not making the decision. So we could get to a stage where our speed of analyzing or gathering information or interpreting it will be much faster, but the ultimate decision of switching on or off or whatever that happens to be will be left with humans, because I feel it will be very challenging for machine to think ethically, or at least as of now we don't have ethical AI models, or models that can think like humans. And if they think like humans, is that an AI? Later.
Yeah,
Someone will guide the ethics of machine.
Yeah.
Use a bit.
But I think talking about ethical AI, to borrow someone else's phrase, talking about ethical AI is a bit like talking about an ethical washing machine. I mean, it's an algorithm. It doesn't have agency to do anything. And even if we think of, and yes, you need a human to make the ultimate decision on AI recommendations. But the issue is that if the AI is making a recommendation, does the human actually make a decision, or is it just pressing the button? I mean, for those of you that are old enough to remember, think of Homer Simpson and sitting at his control panel in the nuclear power plant. And he's got a ducking thing, pressing the button to keep. Like, a lot of what we've talked about seems to be an arms race between potential human bad actors and technology trying to enforce goodness for some unquantified measure of goodness.
That's a good point. And in that loop, when a machine perhaps could make an error, or a self-driving car will injure a person, how do we ensure, do we have any mechanism to ensure that the person, eventually a human being, is responsible for that?
Well, I am not a lawyer, and the UWA Data Institute ran an event with some lawyers in Perth asking this and similar questions. And well, for one thing, I think I learned one thing from that, and that is no matter how complicated we try to make the situation, lawyers will make it even more complicated. But
that's a good one.
But to answer your question, I think that that someone needs to be responsible for what the machine is doing. If I put a bit of 4x2 on the accelerator of my car and hop out of it, it doesn't somehow become a free agent because I've hopped out of the car. It's still a consequence of what I'm doing. If I sit in my Tesla and with a bottle of whiskey and let the self-driving thing take control, it's either me or Elon Musk that's responsible for whatever that car hits.
Yeah. Let's take some questions, yes.
Yeah, well, I suppose just an observation as well, more so than a question. And it was just that with AI, it doesn't necessarily think. It's a prediction machine, not necessarily a thinking machine. And whereas prediction is a necessary component to intelligence, it's not necessarily intelligence in itself. And I think as the prediction nature of AI improves, humans really need to remember to think. Or we need to think to think. And I think when we go back to the car example, like how autonomous is it? And I think there is that ethical debate with cars, like when autonomous cars, if it reaches such a scenario where it has to veer off the road, like will it kill the old person or the baby, or that kind of thing? And we can't program necessarily an AI car to say if then do that. It's just going to predict one scenario after the next. So it's going to predict it's what would a human do in this scenario. It won't think ethically. So I think from when it comes to an AI governance point of view, I think we do need humans at the helm. I don't think we should let them run loose. I think we could get very philosophical with this debate as well. You could look back to maybe like Surreal in 1980, where he talked about the Chinese thought experiment, whereas like somebody in a room looking at Chinese characters might see patterns and be able to spit out a pattern with respect to a question that was answered, but not necessarily understand what the pattern means. So that prediction itself doesn't understand meaning. And again, I think what Cyril kind of alluded to even back then, and this is very philosophical, maybe beyond scope, is that thinking comes from another place. Not necessarily the information structures of our brain, but from another place, and we just need to really...
Yeah, thank you. I think we definitely need multiple perspectives, and I'm so glad that we had such a diversity in our panel, because this is a debate for various views to be at the table and discuss. Lawyers, maybe not necessarily the best solutions, but definitely scientists, futurists, social scientists, technologists. Yes, of course.
My went to business to Los Angeles 2 weeks ago or less. They were using the driverless Jaguar taxi, full autonomic drive. I got a video. Everything perfect, they got delivery on the spot, except there was a tree. And the software is not clever enough to see the tree, so my close family member was not able to squeak. He always is keen, I would know that. So I asked him, did you report this blunder and mistake? No. So my question is, people should try to improve this whole AI stuff. I'm not against, I'm writing about it and supporting, but we should interactively participate on spot as well.
I think that's a good point, and the way of fixing the problem is probably giving more data, right?
Yeah. And this is simple stuff because the tree was not brand new.
Yeah. Comments, questions, further? Thank you, Jacek.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're there.
Yeah, I just want to invite us to question our assumptions as we enter this new phase. So you began with the efficiency, the paperclip maximization, thought experiment, and efficiency. And the assumption there is that, maximum efficiency is an ethical good. So what do we believe is an unqualified good? And more importantly, can we agree? How do we come to an agreement, not just locally will be easier, but as a world? There are commons in the world. We were talking about property. There are certain things that are common to all humans, like the air we breathe and the water that we drink. And we haven't begun to address these things. And if we address them just rolling along from our previous paradigms of maximization of fill in the blank, could be profit, could, whatever it is this sort of extractive motivation, maybe we want to question our assumptions, if that's the best approach, because what it tends to do is create honeypots that we're always having to use more security to protect. And so how do we balance security and freedom in a world with so much power and with a species that is so extraordinarily creative, right? I think that we're actually being called to bring our creative potential forward to this moment and be the humans we were always intended to be. That's my belief.
Thank you.
I'm pretty positive.
Thank you, JP. I'll probably take it as a closing remark, being mindful of time. I would invite everybody to take the conversation outside over a snack and a drink. Thank you so much, distinguished panelists. I really appreciate your time and generosity that you offered and bringing the discussion. It's all kind of free event and a community initiative, but those discussions are very much needed.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing the discussion.
Thank you for putting it together. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and that was the last Western Australia Web3 event for this year. Please remember, next one is gonna start with the big Black Swan event, so please stay in touch with us. Thank you very much.